Would you be fine taking just one bath a year? Sounds insane, right? Well, for many people in the Middle Ages, that was normal. And no, it wasn't because they were lazy or didn't know what soap was. The truth is way weirder. A mix of dirty rivers, odd medical theories, and a whole lot of fear. Today, we're diving into the smelly world of medieval hygiene, or the lack of it. We're talking about Europe between the 5th and 15th centuries, a world of muddy streets, livestock wandering through towns, and castles that smelled way less glamorous than Disney makes them look. Back then, the idea of cleanliness wasn't tied to a hot shower or body wash. Instead, it was tangled up with religion, medicine, and social status. So why didn't medieval people bath often? Let's break it down. First, water. For us, it's simple. Turn a tap, done. For them, not so much. Medieval water sources were often contaminated with human waste, animal carcasses, and industrial runoff from things like tanneries. Drinking it could already be fatal. Bathing in it wasn't much safer. Doctors also believed that hot water opened your pores, making it easier for diseases to sneak in. So if you hopped into a warm bath, congratulations, you just gave the plague a VIP invitation to your body. Now, here's the twist. Public bathhouses did exist. Inspired by the Romans, they had steam rooms, hot pools, even massages. For a while, they were quite popular. But then, reputation happened. Over time, bathhouses became associated with prostitution. If someone saw you heading into one, people weren't assuming you were there for a scrub. They were assuming you had other business. Eventually, many were shut down, either by authorities or the church. So imagine needing a bath, but it comes with the social risk of being judged like you just walked into a shady motel. Not exactly encouraging. Speaking of the church, Christianity added another wrinkle. Leaders saw shared nudity as sinful temptation. Bathhouses, once a normal part of city life, became dens of immorality in their eyes. And then came the idea that spiritual purity mattered more than physical cleanliness. Many monks went months, even years, without bathing, proud of their sacrifice. Basically, if you smelled bad, you could argue it was proof of holiness. God apparently loved the stink. Okay, but surely kings and queens stayed fresh, right? Kind of. Nobles sometimes had wooden or copper tubs filled with water, herbs, and perfumes. There are accounts of royalty bathing in milk or rose water, but this wasn't daily. It was more like a luxury spa day once in a while. Their real trick for cleanliness was changing clothes frequently. People believed that putting on a fresh linen shirt meant you were clean because the fabric would absorb sweat and dirt. In today's logic, that's like skipping the shower but bragging because you changed into a new t-shirt. Spoiler, it didn't work. For everyday life, medieval people used what we might call dry baths. They wiped down with cloths soaked in vinegar, oils, or even wine. Perfumes and powders were also popular, especially among the wealthy. So instead of smelling clean, people smelled complicated. Imagine a crowded feast hall with 200 bodies covered in layers of musk, vinegar, flowers, and sweat. It was less spring freshness and more alchemical experiment gone wrong. There were times when a proper bath did happen. Weddings, religious holidays, and coronations often involved washing beforehand. The idea was less about hygiene and more about ritual purity. But yes, there are references to the so-called annual bath. Whether literal or exaggerated, the point is, people bathed rarely enough that it was a noteworthy event. Today, the thought of announcing, "Hey everyone, I'm taking my yearly shower," is hilarious. Back then, it was reality. Medieval medicine was creative, let's say. Many physicians believed that strong odors kept away disease. So if you smelled awful, maybe the plague would avoid you. So ironically, bad hygiene could be seen as protection. Others thought too much bathing could weaken you, damage fertility, or even cause madness. Bathing was basically treated like smoking. Do it too often, and your life expectancy might drop. So when people avoided baths, they genuinely thought they were being health conscious. When the Black Death hit Europe in the 14th century, paranoia skyrocketed. Bathhouses were accused of spreading the disease, and public bathing declined even further. Cleanliness was no longer associated with safety, quite the opposite. Instead, people turned to even heavier perfumes, incense, and clothing rituals to ward off bad air. Basically, when half the continent was dying, the response was not wash more, it was smell stronger. So were medieval streets just one giant cloud of human stink? Yes and no. People did wash their faces and hands regularly. They valued clean linens and hair grooming. Teeth were rubbed with cloths or herbs. And peasants, who worked outdoors, often bathed in rivers during summer despite the risks. But compared to modern hygiene standards, absolutely it was funky. A medieval market would have smelled like sweat, animals, leather, smoke, and a touch of urine. Not exactly the scent of civilization you'd want in a candle. The most bizarre part is how normal all this was. If everyone smells equally bad, no one notices. And while some nobles did indulge in fancy baths, the average person saw water as dangerous, sinful, or just unnecessary. Imagine living in a world where the person who baths once a month is considered the clean freak. That was the Middle Ages. So, why didn't medieval people rarely bath? Because water was dirty, religion frowned on it, medicine warned against it, and society just didn't expect it. Instead, they masked the smell with perfumes, swapped clothes often, and prayed diseases would pass them by. In the end, maybe the biggest lesson is this: thank your lucky stars for modern plumbing, because while medieval castles might look romantic on TV, trust me, you wouldn't want to smell one. And hey, if you enjoyed this little trip into the stinkier side of history, hit that subscribe button. Otherwise, I'll assume you're one of those annual bath people. And that's a club nobody wants to join.